A Chilean-American journalist Gonzalo Lira has reportedly died in prison in Ukraine at the age of 55. U.S. journalists cited Lira's father, who believes his son was tortured to death over his criticism of Vladimir Zelensky.
I cannot accept the way my son has died. He was tortured, extorted, incommunicado for 8 months and 11 days, and the U.S. Embassy did nothing to help my son. The responsibility of this tragedy is the dictator Zelensky, with the concurrence of a senile American president, Joe Biden.
Well, Gonzalo Lira had over 83,000 followers on YouTube, where he published videos mocking the American establishment. Last May, he was arrested in the Ukrainian city of Kharkov for discrediting the Ukrainian leadership and army after he criticized Kiev's unwillingness to sign a peace deal with Russia. American investigative journalist Alex Rubinstein posted a letter from Gonzalo in which he claimed officials were ignoring his life-threatening illness.
I have had double pneumonia in both lungs, as well as pneumothorax and a very severe case of edema. All this started in mid-October, but was ignored by the prison.
All right, let's cross live now to Mike Jones, independent journalist, who joins me from Moscow. Mike, what are your initial thoughts on Gonzalo's sudden death in Ukrainian custody?
Sadly, this is a huge failure by the U.S. administration. Blinken was made aware of Gonzalo's case. Elon Musk even reached out on social media to question the Ukrainian authorities. They promised a court date, in fact, as I reported on, in mid-December, which they failed to deliver on. Prior to his arrest, Gonzalo reached out to me personally through Twitter to ask for my help in escaping Ukraine. Of course, there was not much that I could do, but I did as much as I was able. And he talked to me of the torture that he had faced in his previous arrest. For citizens of the US and indeed the UK, like myself, it's a stark warning to journalists in particular. I think of the case of Julian Assange. The fact that the US administration allowed Mr. Lira to languish in, as his father called, the dictator Zelensky's prison. Gonzalo Lira himself was very critical of the Zelensky regime. The fact that they not only allowed him to languish without help, as is claimed, but also to his death, should serve as a very, very stark warning to the likes of British journalist Graham Phillips, as well, who is sanctioned by the British government, that the freedom of speech and democracy in the West is nothing but lip service. It's nothing but an illusion. They will not deliver. They will not assist you if you go against their narrative, their regime.
Yeah, Mike, Gonzalo Lira was known for his alternative views on key issues. Let's listen to some parts of his latest videos, which he had posted.
They could have settled this back in April of 2022, just 2 months after the start of this conflict. And it was because of the Washington warmongers who told Zelensky, if you sign any kind of ceasefire settlement with the Russians, we'll quit our support of you. We'll quit the money that we're sending you. Joe Biden has announced that he's running for re-election in 2024. He's going to be 82, so 86 by the time he gets out, and already we see him on his last legs. The Americans are very nervous about this rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Well, all of a sudden, nobody is on their side. Everybody is withdrawing of their quote-unquote Middle Eastern partners.
So, Mike, do you believe because of his views that's the reason for his fate? If he had perhaps followed a different narrative, do you think that the story would have ended differently?
I believe, yes, Gonzalo was definitely a divisive character, not just for his views on Ukraine against the establishment, against the narrative, but also among viewers on YouTube. I think Gonzalo enjoyed the reaction, the response from people. He even upset the likes of Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter called into question Gonzalo's arrangement with the SBU. Why was Gonzalo released the first time? Let's not forget that the transgender spokesperson for the territorial defense, the Sarah Ashton Cirillo figure, delighted in the rumors that the Kraken battalion had murdered Gonzalo the first time. This wasn't a strange case for Gonzalo. He had been targeted, he had been harassed, indeed he'd been tortured before And despite this, he risked all he could to try and get to freedom, be it Russia, be it the West, any way he could. He pleaded with all possible means available to him. And indeed, so did his family working in the US, Gonzalo Lira Sr., and many other people, including from other YouTube channels who knew and communicated with Gonzalo. It's very clear that once the Zelensky regime, and indeed the US backers and the Western governments as well, have got their hooks into you, they've decided that your fate is determined, that unfortunately there's very little you can do about it. Even when the likes of Tucker Carlson, who has championed Gonzalo Lira's freedom and cause, Elon Musk as well, these are titans of social media, have got out there and raised their voices and spoken out for the freedom of speech and criticism and democracy, indeed. Sadly, Gonzalo Lira's case is a very, very sad warning and reminder to everyone about the state of the collective West.
Yeah, he was an American journalist, a citizen of a country that's actively helping Ukraine. Why were there no attempts from Washington to free him? It seems like if Washington had done something, that he could have easily been freed.
I think there's no doubt. If Washington had the motivation, of course they could have pulled the strings. They are, after all, the financiers of Ukraine. They are literally paying the wages of the civil servants, of the pensioners, of the whole country. Americans themselves know this. It's not been a secret. So it wouldn't have taken more than a phone call from Antony Blinken to have released Gonzalo Lira, or at least got some semblance of procedure, due course, even had him sent back to the US. If he had indeed have committed a crime, perhaps he could have been tried in his home country. There's all sorts. I'm not an expert on the legal side of things, but it doesn't take more than a layman to understand that there was absolutely everything the US Embassy could have done, but chose not to do. And it's resulted in the death of a very brave man. It has to be said, he did know the risks. I'm not going to call into question his character or personality. I don't believe in speaking ill of the dead, and other people will hold other opinions of Gonzalo, and that was part of his flair, his character. He was not liked by everyone. That's absolutely sure, and we can understand that when it comes to Ukraine and the SBU. But he did have awareness, and he made a very bold and principled choice, and he stood up for freedom of speech and what he believed was democracy, what he thought was the right thing to do. And very sadly, it appears that he paid the ultimate price.
Mike Jones, independent journalist. Mike, thank you.
Thank you.